Voice of college football here, Mark Rogers TV, striking up the live stream on a Sunday afternoon. It's about 4:45 Eastern time. Hopefully you're joining us live, and you can join the live chat, which we have yet to name, but it was mentioned to me several times in the last week that this is the very best live chat room in college football. So I thought you guys should name yourself something. So you guys work on that. Otherwise, wanted to jump on board to talk top 25 college football. My rankings are out. It's the top 25 that actually makes sense, just released. Also gave my thoughts on Notre Dame going forward. Half the season's in the books. Notre Dame is 6-0, 6 to go. Those games are against Pitt, Navy, Northwestern on the road, Florida State, Syracuse, and New York City, and USC on the road at the LA Coliseum. Notre Dame, will they make the college football playoff? What do they need to do to make the college football playoff? Do they need to do something different, more than a conference champion with the lack of a 13th data point? So we investigate that and look at the remaining portion of the schedule and what's different about Notre Dame football, especially on offense, of course, right now versus what we saw just a few weeks ago. Miami with a big win against Florida State, coming back from 20 down late in the third quarter to win it 28-27. Wanted to delve into that first and foremost because if you've seen the title of the live stream, we are looking at Miami and Florida State. But of course, we're always open to anything that you want to talk about concerning college football. The lines are open at 860-325-3687. I'll put the number in the live stream, 860-325-3687. Of course, Notre Dame defeated Virginia Tech, as we mentioned. Miami over Florida State. Huge win for Texas A&M over Kentucky. Maybe the storyline's more about the Wildcats losing for the first time this year at 5-1. Florida upends LSU with a late drive by LSU coming up empty and a Joe Burrow pick 6 by the Gators. Out west, Stanford gets tripped up for a second consecutive week, and they are really manhandled by Utah in that one at home in Palo Alto. Washington able to survive an upset scare from UCLA of sorts by a touchdown. Other big games, Ohio State and Dwayne Haskins, 6 touchdown passes, defeat Indiana in a closer than expected game that the Buckeyes pulled away in the fourth quarter, 49-26. Michigan was dominant over Maryland by 28 points. Clemson annihilated Wake 63-3. What else was on the radar? North Carolina State is still undefeated following a win against Boston College in which they led 28-3 and then got a bit of a scare from the Eagles 28-23. West Virginia is still undefeated. They played a game Kansas team that is no longer just a floor mat, just a walking mat, a doormat. That's the word, doormat. Are the Kansas Jayhawks. They actually show up and provide some resistance, but West Virginia too good in that one. Final score of 38-22. And of course, the big one that we highlighted a number of times yesterday, Texas jumps out to a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter, withstands Kyler Murray and his theatrics and athletic, freakish ability, along with Hollywood Brown and CeeDee Lamb and Trey Sermon, and the Sooners come back to tie it, but Sam Ehlinger has come of age, and Cameron Digger, the freshman place kicker for Texas, won it at the gun 48-45. I would love to dig up the responses that I received following Texas's opening loss to Maryland after I had picked just a few days earlier Texas to win the Big 12. You can imagine I was bashed and beaten and battered down. Generally, idiot or moron were pretty much the default terms at that point. All right, let's look at the live chat. And also, I want to get into the Amon Richards story and see what you guys have to say. Miami fans out there, chime in on both the Amon Richards story and the Florida State win, the comeback from 27-7 down, and the outlook going forward for the Canes. So again, the number is 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. Keep in mind that we've got our 6th edition of the Voice of College Football newsletter coming out tomorrow. And so you'll want to jump on that. Just send me your email to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Your email to MarkRogersTV at Gmail will get you the next newsletter. And if you'd like any back copies, we can send those as well. Who's in the chat? Cashboy D, tell him to play us. Ray, 7337, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, and a wild card in the Final Four. What's a wild card mean? Okay, wild card. To me, wild card. Is Cincinnati a wild card? They're undefeated. Cincinnati? Wild card. Who's a wild card? Anybody with 1 or 0 losses right now? Colorado? There's a wild card. Maybe I need to cut a video. The forgotten team. The 5-0 Colorado Buffs. 5-0. I saw a segment on national television both last night and another one today that was talking about college football playoff projections and then looking at the various conferences and the odds that that conference would place one team and then the odds that the conference would place 2 teams. And of course, the SEC had the best chances of placing both 2 teams and 1 team in the playoff. The Big Ten was second in both categories. So the Pac-12, with the plight of Washington with a loss now to an Auburn team with 2 losses and Stanford stumbling twice, doesn't look primed to take a shot at the college football playoff. But do you think Colorado is mentioned at all? They are 5 games into the season. I understand and don't expect Colorado to complete a run in which they go, let's say, 11-1 and win a Pac-12 championship game. Do I expect that? No. Do I think that if I was having a conversation, though, about Pac-12's championship opportunity and the path to the championship, the different scenarios, and talking about the college football playoff and how the Pac-12 may factor into the conference or into the college football playoff, would I mention Colorado? Yeah, they're the only undefeated team in the Pac-12. Yes, they should be mentioned. They should be discussed. You could talk about, okay, here are the scenarios, and this is what we currently see. This is the track record and the resumes of the teams. Then we can project and talk about what we think is going to happen and that they're going to lose 3 or 4 games. Fine. There's part opinion, but there's also fact. The fact right now is that Colorado's won 5 games. They have yet to lose a game. Or they might be 6-0 after they beat Arizona State. All right. Let's see what we've got on the line. So for Ray, I don't know what a wild card is. Let's go Kane. Snap Bro. Snap Bro, don't think I've seen you on the live chat, or maybe not for a long, long time. Sense of Tumor's on the line as well. Miami is trash and garbage. Alabama's a powerhouse. Notre Dame is overrated trash. Sense of Tumor, Notre Dame beat a trash Stanford team and trash overrated Michigan team. Whew, coming hard with the take there. And Sense of Tumor did call me a couple weeks ago, and it was a good phone call. I would back off on the trash statements, especially when it comes to Michigan. Michigan is one of the 10 or 12 best teams in the country. So if Michigan's trash, then just basically everybody's trash. Anybody that's lost a game is trash. They're all trash. And Alabama's obviously played nothing but trash. All right, Ray 7337. Who has Alabama played? Mercer, great high school, Bama, great high school team. Yeah, you guys go back and forth. Okay. Snap Bro, Virginia Tech got beat by Old Dominion. They trash. Everybody's trash. They're all trash, right? Virginia Tech is pretty good. Miami will find that out the hard way. Where the heck is that Ohio-loving Rogers? Here. I love the Bobcats. Big Bobcats fan. Ohio through and through. OU, baby. The Bobcats. $786 Canes. Nikosi Perry. What do we got? About freaking time? Yes, I am. You guys can talk when I don't show up. You guys can go ahead and just talk. That's fine. I guess I should have struck up the live stream. I had to take care of a few things. Plus, the Browns were in overtime. Bama on the way to winning 3 championships in 5 years. What has your team done as of late? 786 Canes. Been a while for you, too, I believe. Good to see you. Victor gave us a phone call the other day. In 2 seasons, Coach Saban will retire. Or, of course, that was just a typo. The T in place of the B. A lot of Bama talk on here. A lot of Bama talk. Don't see a whole lot here. If you've got a question for me, certainly leave it in the live chat. I'll try to find it. But otherwise, 860-325-3687. Amon Richards has retired from football. And I wanted to pull up the story on ESPN that was reported about 10:30 this morning. Miami wideout Amon Richards' career appears to be over because of a disabling neck injury that will make playing football too high-risk proposition for him going forward. Miami announced the news Sunday without revealing the exact nature of the injury or how it happened. The announcement came one day after the 16th-ranked Hurricanes rallied to beat Florida State. Richards spent that game on the sideline jumping and celebrating with teammates as Miami pulled off its biggest comeback win since 2013 or 2003. That will be his role going forward. Richards' career ends with 74 catches for 1,382 yards and 6 touchdowns. The former 4-star recruit was a freshman All-America in 2016 with 49 catches, 934 yards, and 3 touchdowns. ESPN's Todd McShay had Richards as the number 9 wide receiver for 2019 in his preseason rankings. So that's it for the NFL draft, of course, while Mel Kiper Jr. had him at number 4 among underclassmen. I'm extremely appreciative of the university's athletic training and medical staffs for diagnosing this injury, and to the football coaches and staff for always putting my health first, Richards said in a statement distributed by the school. I plan to continue working towards my degree at and look forward to the next chapter in my life. Sounds like a young man who's been preparing for this day for quite some time. Richards will remain in scholarship at Miami. While we share in Amon's disappointment that his football career is over, his health must be the top priority. Mark Richt. After the Miami Herald reported the extent of the injury, citing a source on Saturday night, Richards retweeted a video of the locker room celebration Saturday night with his own caption of, quote, last time mixed emotions, and it shows the tweet right here. You can find it right on the front page of ESPN's college football page, and I'm sure about zillion other places online. Video from the locker room. Richards becomes the second prominent Miami player to see his career end with a neck injury in less than a year. We talked about it with Cam Underwood from State of the U about this time last year. Malik Young's final game was in last season's Orange Bowl, or it would have been 7 or 8 months ago, where a helmet-to-helmet collision left him in need of surgery that stabilized the C1 and C2 vertebrae at the top of his neck. And doctors later told the cornerback that he was extremely lucky to have avoided full paralysis. Young walked off the field after that hit, not immediately aware of the severity, and now Richards is dealing with a similar matter. All right, we could go through the rest of this, but Amon Richards, obviously a prized recruit, came into the program, caught 49 passes, 3 touchdowns as a freshman All-America, and we've had on, again, Cam Underwood in particular, State of the U, discussing his multi-skill set, his great athletic ability and what might have been, and then he started to have injuries, other injuries aside from the neck, knee injury, ankle injury that sidelined him for much of 2017. I think he only caught like 17 passes last year, something in that range. And made his final appearance against Miami or against LSU in the season opener, 1 reception, 9 yards, and has just been listed on the team injury report since. So no Amon Richards. Obviously, what is first and foremost is his health, and that's going to be protected by staying off the football field and hopefully nothing permanent or affecting his causing pain, causing discomfort, causing limited mobility, causing deterioration of life and his body over the rest of his life. Hopefully that has not taken place, and hopefully this spares him that. For the Miami football team, obviously, they have missed a special player for the most part since 2016. And they are fortified at the position. There's no real cause for concern in terms of a football standpoint. Not that they didn't want and desire to have Amon Richards available, but they're good to go at wide receiver. So that was one of the reasons why I struck up the live stream. Was I saw this come down early this afternoon and wanted to strike up the live stream because I figured the Amon Richards retirement, coupled with the big comeback against Florida State and what that means, just hitting me that I've got Florida State colors on. But of course, I also have what? USC colors on and Boston College colors on. William Lee, yes, the I go, but it was a good game. Okay, Jalen Hurts was our quarterback from the past is the past. Auburn's a cluster or something, but beat Bama last year. The Miami win was important for a rivalry game. So how are you guys taking the win? If I would have said 28-27 yesterday before the game, most Miami fans would have said, man, that's a bad performance. But if I take you to 27-7 near the end of the third quarter and say, you're going to win this thing 28-27, of course, you're ecstatic. Certainly, there was plenty of time to get the job done. And Miami actually scored the game-winning touchdown with a lot of time left. So there was plenty of time to get back in the game. But when you haven't played that well for that long, and the team on the other sideline, it's not a situation where you're down 27-7 against Syracuse or Virginia. You're down 27-7 against a team that has looked awful, been a mess. I keep using that term, a mess, because that to me is the best way to describe Willie Taggart's offense in particular since the opener. It's been a mess. The whole team's been a mess. But they don't have Virginia talent. They don't have North Carolina or Syracuse talent. They have Florida State talent. They still have that kind of talent. So if you're down 27-7 late in the third quarter, then it makes it dicey. So it, on one point, a disappointing performance overall by Miami. On the other hand, you beat the rival. You were down 27-7. You showed character. You got behind your quarterback, who's obviously still developing, and you've got a defense that turned it over and turned it over and turned it over and got the chain working and got the crowd behind them, and it just turned into a big wave of momentum that Florida State could not handle. So Miami's now 5-1. They're 2-0 in the ACC. Florida State drops to 3-3, 1-3 in the ACC. N'Kosi Perry, if you just look at the stat line, not impressive, 13 for 32. But he made those plays count. He hit for 204 and 4 touchdowns. There were a couple plays in particular where he showed up big. A couple quick strike off the turnovers in which he found receivers and completed short field drives and didn't allow the offense to bog down and have to kick a field goal. He hit for touchdown passes, 4 in 13 completions, 4 touchdowns in 13 completions. Plus, he converted a big 4th down play that was huge in the game as well. Jeff Thomas making big plays, as well as Brevin Jordan in this game. The run game not effective against Florida State. So a bit of a concern there. I think if we would go back to most of Florida State's games, I would have to go through game by game to see how they have defended the run. I remember Virginia Tech hitting on big plays, but not necessarily hitting for consistent rushing yardage against. They hit the one long play that broke the Seminoles' back in the second half, and Josh Jackson was able to break contain and get some big yardage on some plays. But basically, Virginia Tech didn't run consistently on Florida State, and Miami certainly didn't either. Syracuse, again, don't recall the rushing attempts against Florida State, but Travis Homer, 21 carries for 70 yards, and DJ Dallas, who has been a monster in recent weeks, only carried it 10 times for 31 yards. The defense was exceptional. So again, we've got to take Florida State's struggles and the Florida State offense that has been a mess. I think I mentioned that, a mess since game one, and they continue to be, although they started to find themselves in the second half, and in particular the fourth quarter at Louisville the week before. And 27 points sounds like they're starting to generate some offense, but really, if you look at it, Miami's defense only really gave up one drive. They gave up a 58-yard, 8-play drive for a touchdown. That was it. The last 9 possessions of the game, Florida State went end of half, in which they had enough time to do something with the ball. So it wasn't just one play, 3 seconds left. You got the ball at your own 25 and you kneel down. They had the ball long enough and had enough time to try to do something. They could not. So Miami stops them at the end of the half. Punt, fumble, interception, punt, missed field goal, only a 27-yard drive. So it's not like they took it 82 yards and missed a field goal. 27-yard drive. Fumble, punt, punt. During most of that time, that's when Miami made its comeback. Florida State just needed something, just needed a field goal, just any kind of sustained drive to put 3 on the board to potentially win the game. Joe Jackson, Jonathan Garvin hit big games. Michael Pinckney, of course, a big, huge, key interception in that game. And as a side note, in this series, it was the 4th consecutive game in which the winning starting quarterback was a new quarterback, a new quarterback to that team. So, of course, N'Kosi Perry, Malik Rocher last year, 2016, DeAndre Francois, 2015, Everett Golson got the win for Florida State. So now Miami is looking at not a gauntlet, not a tough schedule, not a great schedule, but enough teams that if Miami plays its C game and they play their A- game, can beat Miami. Any of these teams can beat Miami. Of course, I don't expect any of them to do it. Although if I look at the entirety of these 6 games, I'm thinking Miami trips up one time. I picked Miami to go 10-2. I thought that they would probably lose at Virginia Tech and somewhere else, maybe Florida State at the time when we thought Florida State was going to be close to Florida State football. At Virginia, at Boston College on a Friday night. I think that was the game that I targeted. So 2 on the road the next 2 weeks in Charlottesville against a Virginia team that is developing under Bronco Mendenhall. Still has a long ways to go, but they're coming off a bye week. To prepare for Miami at home, and then BC on a Friday night on the road. Duke at home, decent Duke team. We saw what Virginia Tech did to them just last week. 38-14, whatever the final score was, something like that. But Duke's decent. They'll provide a challenge. At Georgia Tech, of course, Georgia Tech almost won in Miami last year without a 4th down juggling catch from, I believe it was Langham, right? That pulled that game out. Miami goes to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech obviously put a whipping on Louisville, 66-31 at Virginia Tech. Notre Dame made them look bad in the second half, but I think that game was about 4 or 5 plays away from being razor tight. But of course, Notre Dame didn't make the mistakes, and they made huge plays. Virginia Tech didn't make so many huge plays and made a few costly mistakes. Those teams were separated by about 5 to 6 plays, and that's what typically happens. I'm not making an excuse for Virginia Tech or saying that they're as good as Notre Dame, but that they were only separated by about 5 or 6 plays in that game. So traveling to Blacksburg could be interesting for Miami. So they've got 0 losses in the conference, but Virginia Tech, despite stumbling twice, they also have no losses in the conference. Now, Virginia Tech has the same non-division schedule as Miami. Ironically, the 2 best teams, or who we think are the 2 best teams in the division, play both Boston College and Florida State. Virginia Tech's already taken care of Florida State. They've got BC coming up, and I believe that game would be at home. So if Virginia Tech, it can at least match Miami's record in the conference, then most likely this game's for the division championship. Or if they can play within 1 game. If Miami, let's say, loses no other games in the conference and Virginia Tech loses once, let's say they stumble against BC, well, then Virginia Tech can still win the division by winning that game in Blacksburg. And then, of course, Pitt, Miami. Pitt, they're pretty bad. But at the same time, what have they done? They beat Georgia Tech at home, and they're capable of beating Syracuse. We know what Syracuse is capable of doing. And Pitt won that game on Saturday, 37-34 in overtime. But Pitt also lost to North Carolina. So if you want percentage chances of winning these games for Miami, I say at Virginia, 80%. At BC, 60%. Duke at home, 80%. At Georgia Tech, 80%. At Virginia Tech, 55%. Pitt at home, 85-90% chance of winning. And probably a little bit higher than that. If they play 10 times, Miami might beat them 10 consecutive times, even though they just lost to them last year. All right. A lot of go Canes. LSU was done, so was Auburn. All right, Brad. Are you saying that they're technically done? Because they're not technically done. LSU's lost 1 game. They still have got Bama left to go. But if you're just saying, I don't think that they're any good and that they're going to lose all these games coming up, then that's another thing. I just don't think anyone in that division is in Alabama's league. So regardless of what LSU did at Florida or failed to do, I just thought they're going to show up against Alabama at home and not be able to get the job done against that team. I picked Alabama to go 12-0 to start the season, and I'll not back off of that. Georgia and Bama will crush LSU. I don't know if they're going to crush them, especially Georgia in Death Valley. I think that's probably a touchdown to 10-point game. I don't think they're going to crush them. I don't think Georgia's going to win by 40 points. I would take Georgia to win that game from 7 to 10 points. Dude, Bama plays the same schedule all these years. Have they ever been overrated? No, they keep winning. Learn to love it, Miami. I have no issue with Bama's in-conference schedule because, number one, they can't do anything about it. They don't make the schedule. Number two, they play in the toughest division in college football from top to bottom. Unfortunately, in regards to evaluation of the schedule, Bama's the main reason why it's the toughest division in college football, and they don't play themselves. So they still play Auburn and LSU. These two teams, everybody's down on LSU and Auburn. And no, they're not great teams. They're flawed. They're talented. They're 2 of the 15 best teams in the country, something in that range, especially LSU. Texas A&M, they've got 2 losses, but we saw what they were capable of doing against Clemson and against Kentucky. Texas A&M's one of the 15 to 25 best teams in the country. So Alabama has to deal with them. Alabama plays in the SEC West, which is the best division in college football. I will argue that with anyone, top to bottom. Maybe not the first 4. The first 4 might be in the Big Ten East, but top to bottom, the SEC West is the best. Alabama, though, is one of the main reasons why. If we were evaluating Arkansas's schedule, then we would say, wow, they play in the SEC West. And we would look up at everybody else and say they've got to play Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, etc. Alabama, unfortunately, for fairness and for equity's sake, did not get a equitable schedule out of the Eastern Division. They're playing Tennessee. Tennessee went 0-8 in the conference last year. They're playing Missouri, who's decent. It would be nice to see them play Kentucky and especially Georgia. But they will see Georgia in Atlanta most likely. So by the end of the season, I'm not bashing Alabama's schedule because by the end of the year, they will have seen, if they're in the college football playoff discussion, which of course they will be, LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, 4 of the top 25 to 30 teams in the country. They will have seen Georgia. The issue I have with Alabama's schedule is scheduling Louisville. And people will say that was scheduled 4 or 5 years ago, and Alabama didn't know that Louisville wasn't going to be any good this year. And I keep hearing that. So when you go out and schedule certain programs, there is a high likelihood that if you schedule Oklahoma, or you schedule Michigan, or you schedule Clemson, or Ohio State, or USC, that they're going to be really good. Sure, you could get the 2011 Ohio State Buckeyes under Luke Fickell, who went 6-6. You could get the USC Trojans that went 7-5 under Lane Kiffin. On and on and on. We can give examples of all those. We can get the examples of Clemson for 35 years before Dabo Swinney of going 8-4 every year in that range. But you generally know what you're going to get with those programs. Then you drop it down a tier or maybe 2 tiers. Let's say 2 tiers, because I think the next tier is Wisconsin and Penn State and those schools. Washington, maybe not Washington today because they're pushing the elite, but Washington typically. And you're talking about playing those teams that you think are going to be good, that they should be good. They should be really strong. Auburn, those kind of schools. But then let's take it down a third level. That's Louisville. You know that's the issue when you're playing Louisville. That Louisville could be, at very best, a 9-3 kind of team. They didn't really have that great of teams even with Lamar Jackson there. They were just as good before Lamar Jackson with Bobby Petrino on the sideline as during Lamar Jackson. Look at the records of Louisville football with Lamar Jackson. Yes, they were more exciting, but Louisville football was no better with Lamar Jackson at quarterback than they were before Lamar Jackson. So you know what you're getting when you schedule Louisville. At best, you're getting an 8-4, 9-3 team, or you could be getting this, or you could be getting 6-6, 7-5. That's Louisville. So Alabama should schedule somebody else. If they're going to schedule Louisville, schedule somebody else. Do what a number of other teams do across the country and schedule 2 solid Power 5 games. Duke next year for Alabama. Fine. Play Duke, but play somebody else. That's the issue I have with Alabama's schedule. It doesn't have anything to do with the SEC schedule that they can't control. That's the SEC's problem. The SEC doesn't know how to schedule. The Big Ten doesn't know how to schedule. The ACC doesn't know how to schedule. And the Pac-12 doesn't know how to schedule. And if you would like to know my scheduling formula, I cut all those videos in the off season. And I'll do them again. I'll freshen those up this next off season. The Pac-12 is the least offender because they play 12 conference games. They play 9 conference games and they only have 12 teams. Therefore, they only miss 2 opponents. Therefore, there's not as much wiggle room to screw it up like we see in the ACC and the SEC especially, and with the Big Ten to a lesser degree. All right. Most teams are garbage compared to Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia. Ray, and you want teams to join a conference. Yeah, it would be nice if teams joined a conference. Why would we have some teams in a conference and other teams not in a conference? Or why don't we just have everybody be an independent? We could do that. If everybody wants to go Notre Dame and BYU that way, that direction. Everybody be independent. Why don't we do that? Nobody's mentioned that. They always mention, well, Notre Dame's fine as an independent, or Notre Dame needs to join a conference. Okay. Well, the argument I have for Notre Dame in particular, and there's 4 or 5 other teams, but they're insignificant. Nobody cares about Massachusetts and New Mexico State and Liberty being independents. But they wanted to play FBS football, and that was the only route for them. Notre Dame has control over its destiny. They should have joined the Big Ten a long time ago. It makes perfect sense based on rivalries and geography and football tradition. Yes, they should join a conference. What if everyone said to Notre Dame, we're disbanding all the conferences and we're all going to be independents? And then we would just either have the teams just schedule themselves, and that would be crazy, wouldn't it? Schedule all 12 games. Or we would have the governing body that I would like to have of the selection committee that would schedule all the teams and make it fair. But why don't we make everybody independent? I don't think that works. That's my second bottle of water. All right. Notre Dame always flirts with the ACC, but leaves them at the altar. Okay, so Notre Dame has joined at the ACC in all other sports except football, but they play 5 games against the ACC. If I were the ACC, I would have said, see ya. The ACC just makes themselves look like second tier, second class rubbish when they allow Notre Dame to treat them like that. And they benefit financially from the agreement because they get Notre Dame in men's basketball and women's basketball to a certain extent. There is a revenue sport, but basically men's basketball. Then they get the benefit of the 5 football games that are played at ACC stadiums, and the ACC teams get to appear on national television when they play at Notre Dame. And it's a win-win financially for both sides. That's why they did it. But in terms of dignity and respect, for a conference to say, we want you to join us across the board, but we'll allow you just to handpick the sports that you want to join us. And then in football, just play us 5 times, but we know you don't want to join us, so we won't make you or force you to join us. That's not the deal I would make. Andrew wants to talk about the elephant in the room. I will allow you guys to do that, unless you want to hit me with that. 860-325-3687. So I've got whoever this is. I have yet to see your handle on Mark Rogers TV. ARRONNOWOV. So I won't even try to pronounce that. Thanks for joining us here at Mark Rogers TV. And yes, I put Miami football on the title because my thought was I've got a lot of Miami people that call and watch. And then I also have a call coming in right now. The Amon Richards story hit, so I thought this would be a good live stream and we could focus on that. But I always leave it up to you guys to talk about whatever you want. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's George. Mark, how you doing today?
Hey, George. You got to be feeling good today.
Oh, man, I'm so happy.
Good ball game.
That's the first time I just turned everything else off and just watched that one game, every second of it. It was thrilling.
See, I would love that luxury to be able to shut off the other games because
first time I didn't.
Yeah, that's what we used to do when we were we had no choice when we were growing up. You just watched one game and you really were able to focus and get involved and really embrace it and absorb it rather than looking at 20 screens at the same time and looking at your phone and yeah, we just can't handle that in this society anymore. But I don't want to take away from your revelry, George. Take it away.
I'm only 58, man, and we used to have only black and white TVs. At first they were smaller, then they got bigger, and we always had to get up and go change the channel. Can you imagine that?
I used to practically bust the channel changer because I would whip it so fast. You know, if you were on like channel 6 and you wanted to get to channel 24 and you'd like...
Right. Yeah, you spin that thing.
And if your mom
don't even know what
they have absolutely no idea
what we're talking about.
No, and if your mom, let's say your mom controlled the TV and she's watching whatever she's watching Dynasty or Dallas, and you want to see the game, the commercial hits, and you just want to see a couple pitches or a couple plays, and you're just spinning that thing as fast as you can.
Hey.
Yes.
Did you see the Florida game?
I saw some of it. I put it on DVR, but I had a number of other things going at the same time. So I really, really wanted to see that game, believe me, but not so much. No.
Did you see the 90,000 fans? It was packed, and we looked so good. Them colors and uniforms. Well, it's good for recruiting, I think.
You had the all blue on, right?
Yeah, and orange helmets.
I think what I need to do to keep up with all of this is I need to watch all the little 30-minute cut downs. What I'm going to do.
After the games are over, that's what I do. I go watch all the highlights if I don't see the games from the other. But, yeah, it's awesome.
That's a nice win for you.
There's no sideline space at Florida Field. You run off that field and you smack a wall 10 feet later. There's no room. The fans are right on top of you. Every recruit that was there said they've never witnessed anything like that in their lives. They were very impressed. They said they couldn't hear it was hurting their ears, that kind of shit. It was awesome.
Your boys are back in play now. Your preseason prognostication can come true.
I know. We're still hanging in there. Isn't this great? Oh, my God. Something to do on Saturday.
Let's see what you got coming up here.
Give it a look here. Vanderbilt, a bye week in Georgia.
So, yeah, let's see. You are already at 5-1. All right. So you've already won a few, let's see, 3 SEC games. So you've got a few more to go. Yeah, Vanderbilt on the road. That should be no problem. Georgia. Neutral site, of course. That's a 3:30 CBS game. You got Mizzou at home. South Carolina's at home. And that's it for the SEC. It's all going to come down to the Georgia game. If you beat Georgia, you win the East.
I'm pretty sure about that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure about it, too.
Georgia's starting to sound like Miami. They win one game, and they're just the world champions, self-proclaimed world champions. When did Florida get so bad? Because they had a suck-ass coach last year who rode a shark naked that was embarrassed and quit halfway through the season. It was just total family dysfunction. You know, it had nothing to do with the players and the skill and the speed. And so I'm glad they got their shit back together real quick.
We really don't. If we're just going by George, if we're just going by what we see on the field this year, we don't even know that Georgia is that good because they haven't played anybody, and South Carolina is showing that they're not that good. What we know is that the team was really good last year, maybe the best team in the country, and a lot of it's come back, especially on offense. And we also know that they've recruited out of their mind. So we know that it's like Alabama. Although Georgia's not dominating to that extent, but Alabama has yet to play anyone, but we know that they'll be fine. We know that they're that good.
Nick Saban had 15 years of being a position coach before he went up the next level. And then he had 10 years at that level, then 10 more years at another level, then the pros. And I mean, there's no comparison between Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. And just because Kirby Smart coached his defense doesn't mean he's Nick Saban. So I just want to see it in real life. Prove it that you're one of the great epic coaches of all time. And Georgia's carrying the baggage. They're expected to be number one. They're expected this, expected. That's all expected. Florida is sick of hearing about this, so we have a mental advantage, to go shut them up. I mean, it's almost defensive. We beat them almost every year, and when we're not supposed to beat them, we beat them. And yet, I'm just saying, I know it's just a narrative by sports writers and whatever, but yeah, I don't think Georgia's in a very good position. LSU might beat them next week right off the bat. So,
well, Georgia did prove it last year. Now they have improved it over and over and over, but Kirby Smart did field a great team last year.
He threw the national championship away. He had it. That's not a great coach. Who throws away a national championship like that? Because he can't call plays or what? Did he just start yesterday? Who would have called those plays like that?
Well, I think it was a pretty epic game in which they lost to a really good team.
Yeah, right up till the end when he basically gave the game away. Anyway, I have a problem with this. Every time they show Jordan Scarlett, the Florida running back, every single time, every game, they say credit card scandal, suspended last year, blah, 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 right? When on the Ohio State game, I never once heard them mention sex toys and taking pictures of your private parts in the White House or any of that shit. What's going on? Why are they picking on Florida? It's over. It's done. They served their suspension. They did their time.
Yeah, I think there's a time to address that. So basically what you do is that the kid comes back in his first game back. You outline what happened and why he was gone and what the suspension was. And then from then on, I guess it could be brought up from time to time. But
I agree that every single game, man, I've watched this year, they talk about it. I'm like, no one even cares. That no one cares. The other team don't even care. Maybe they don't have nothing else to talk about. Indiana, I saw him get away. Ohio State caused a pass interference right before they threw. The next touchdown was a touchdown anyway, but I was angry about that. Like, don't rip off Indiana when they get a pass interference. But Ohio State was going to win that game anyway.
Yeah, Indiana always gives them a bit of a scare, a bit of a tussle for about a half. That typically happens.
It seems so weird to me when I hear about all these other teams playing teams like Indiana and Illinois and all the other conferences, Virginia Tech. I mean, come on. That's not a schedule. Everyone's trying to make these other teams seem like there's some kind of competition. Let them go play any Southeastern Conference schedule and see how good they do. Now, Miami can't even get through the ACC. That's just preposterous, ridiculous, and yet they keep proclaiming they're world champions.
So you obviously think the SEC is the best conference. I do too. I don't think that there's that huge of a gap that these other conferences are a joke.
Practices.
You're talking about out of conference.
I don't know how Alabama fans can take it. I wouldn't even watch my own games if I was an Alabama fan. I'd be watching somebody else's games.
Yeah, it's a bit tough to take when they've got those kind of games over and over and over.
Now they're scheduling New Mexico State. What is wrong with them? Anyway, maybe there's a lot of money involved. Maybe that's the way they do it.
There's always money involved. That's always a motivation. All right, George. Vanderbilt next week. Don't look past.
Is Cleveland still playing?
The Browns won.
They won? Okay, cool.
They kicked a field goal with a few seconds left in overtime. Yeah.
Right now.
All right. Why would that be?
Because of Baker Mayfield, and they got Florida's criminal receiver, Antonio Callaway.
They do. Too. They do, but we shouldn't mention that, though.
Little personal interest. Yeah.
We shouldn't mention that, though.
All right. Good luck to everybody in the comment section this weekend, even Miami.
All right, George. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Bye. I'm noticing on my return, is there an odd kind of filter looking thing on my shot? I wonder if that's the sun. Hopefully that's the sun and it's not my screen going bad. That's odd. I just saw that come up. All right. Tony Kidd, #1 fan. You talking crazy like Trump now. You actually said you put in the Big 12 new defense. I don't know what that is. Antonio Brooks on the line. So if you are joining Mark Rogers TV for the very first time, or if I am acknowledging you in the chat, that means that I've never seen your handle before. Please let me know who you root for. I'm going to take that poll sometime in the off season. I'm going to get take a survey of who you guys root for, who you're fans of, and I'm going to make up a big tally. Would just love to know. Yeah, it must be the sunlight on the way it was hitting my screen. It caused this weird hazy filter look. And then I saw it on my live stream as well. So I thought, wow, that must be on there that's causing it on the live stream as well. All right, 860-325-3687. I can stick around for a little bit longer. Certainly, if you guys have anything to talk about concerning college football. I released a look at Notre Dame, 6 wins in, 6 games to go. Check that out. As they've got Pitt and Navy the next 2 weeks, we wouldn't think that they would provide too much resistance, but you never know. And I expect to do the same with Miami, Florida, Miami, and also Texas. I was looking at teams that basically made some sort of a statement or got through, in Miami's case, adversity this week. And now we can start to look toward a conference championship or college football playoff appearance and what that would take. And I thought the 3 teams that kind of broke through this week were Notre Dame, clearing another hurdle, Miami with a comeback against Florida State, and of course, Texas in the Big 12. And maybe I'll do that going forward. Look at teams and their college football playoff chances each week. I am going to do my best to get out some bowl projections. And also, I wanted to hit on, I don't know if anybody's going to watch this, but I'm going to dig into some Colorado football. They're 5-0. They might be 6-0. Are they 6-0? I'm not going to look it up right now. Anyway, they beat Arizona State yesterday, 28-21. And Colorado is undefeated. Nobody talks about Colorado. They're in my top 25. They've been in my top 25. And do I think that they're going to push toward the Pac-12 championship or make a college football playoff? No. But at this point, they're in the discussion. They should be. They're undefeated. All right. So the top 25 that makes sense. Check it out. Also, got to get to my bottom 10. You guys seem to like that. Bowl projections, recaps, meaning we talked about Notre Dame and their playoff possibilities. Also wanted to hit on, as I said, Texas and Miami, a Heisman watch, viewer comments, and then, of course, previews and predictions for this coming week, week 7. Give week 7 a look. All right, so week 7. For week 7, we get started on Thursday night with Texas Tech at TCU. Then on Friday, we've got South Florida at Tulsa. We've got Arizona, Utah. That's a pretty big game for the Utes. So the Utes just knocked off Stanford and really beat them up in Palo Alto last night. And now Utah is hosting Arizona. So that's a big game for Utah. On Saturday, starting at noon, Ohio State, Minnesota, Florida, Vandy, Tennessee, Auburn, Iowa still with hopes of winning the Big Ten Western Division at Indiana. If you missed it, the Hawkeyes beat Minnesota 48-31. Nebraska's at Northwestern. Oklahoma State's at Kansas State. That's all at noon. Let's see. At 12:30, BC hosts Louisville. Later at 2:30 Eastern Time, of course, the NBC game is Pitt at Notre Dame. At 3:30, we've got Georgia at LSU. Got to see that game. We've got Washington, Oregon at 3:30 as well. We've got Michigan State at Penn State. Ew, that's going to be tough to navigate those 3 games. 3:30 this weekend, and I'm just remembering that I may be out of town and have to DVR all this stuff. We'll see how that turns out, but wow, as it stands, yeah, I may have some family obligations out of town, and my goodness, at 3:30. Think about this one: Georgia, LSU, Oregon, Washington, and Michigan State, Penn State, all playing at the same time at 3:30 Eastern time, and Texas A&M, South Carolina. Not a bad game in Columbia. All right, then a little bit later, as we get to the 7 o'clock primetime games, we've got Mizzou at Alabama, West Virginia at Iowa State. Let's not sleep on that game because Iowa State, of course, coming off a win at Oklahoma State and also having defeated or almost defeated, lost by a field goal at TCU the week before. Miami at Virginia is an ESPN2 game at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And Virginia Tech's got North Carolina on the road. That's on ESPNU at 7 o'clock. So get your fill of the ACC at 7 o'clock with Miami, Virginia, Virginia Tech, North Carolina. All right. Prime time, Wisconsin, Michigan. Love it. Prime time in the SEC, Ole Miss, Arkansas. And, of course, that Alabama-Missouri game at 7. Ole Miss, Arkansas at 7:30. Late night, you've got USC hosting Colorado. So there you go with Colorado, who is now ranked at number 19 in the country. Colorado goes to USC. So if Colorado can win that game, then they should get some talk. And Boise State at Nevada, Wyoming at Fresno State late. So for me, if I could only see one game next week, it's Georgia LSU. First and foremost, it's Georgia LSU. Then it's probably Washington, Oregon. And then I would like to see Michigan State, Penn State. Oh, no. If I can only see one game, I'm watching Michigan, Wisconsin. I'm watching Michigan, Wisconsin. Then I'm watching Georgia, LSU. Then I'm watching Oregon, Washington. Those would be my 3. My under the radar good game would be West Virginia at Iowa State. Don't sleep on that game. I'll check out the live chat one more time. Otherwise, I'll take your calls at 860-325-3687. And if you guys have nothing more, then we'll move it along. Michigan State, such a letdown, unless that's Mississippi State for Bren. Tony hopes Michigan beats Wisconsin. Miami Dreamer, this is the first time I've seen your handle on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Welcome. Hope you subscribe, like, and comment. We appreciate the comment in the live chat and your shout out to Amon Richards. Kane for life. Tyler Manning jumping on the live stream. Scarlett might be the 3rd best back in running ability for Florida. He's really hard to tackle, but never runs into the hole with any velocity. Too much sidestepping. Good blocker, though. And we got a call coming in, 860-325-3687. All right. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Antonio Brooks. How you doing?
Antonio, what's going on?
Oh, nothing much.
Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you as well.
Yes, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm just a little frustrated with LSU.
So was it play calling? What was it that you didn't like on Saturday?
Well, first off, what people don't understand is they had a freshman linebacker in for Jackie Phillips.
Yep.
Didn't start. And then they had 2 key wide receivers that should have been playing, weren't playing. And it's like every time they got down to the red zone, a fumble or like they had a first down, but they didn't review it. And that could have changed the game around. They could have been 14-0. Then they got down to the red zone again. They get a flag and a penalty, pushes them back. That could have been 17-0. That game could have been really differently, like real quick in the beginning. But I'm glad it happened early. So.
You're talking about the loss, to get a loss out of the way.
Yes,
so you have high hopes for this team to complete a good run this year.
I'm kind of glad they got smacked in the face because they need that. I could kind of tell Joe Burrow is kind of a little high on these wins right now. He needs to be taken down to earth a little bit to kind of refine his game.
Okay. I can't say that I've really noticed that. I have caught his interviews on the sideline after the big wins against Auburn and Miami, and I'm trying to think of the latest one that I saw him talking after the game. Maybe it was the Ole Miss game when he threw the 3 touchdown passes. But yeah, he seemed rather confident, talking about that they're all confident and think that they can do whatever they need to do in the last few seconds to get the job done. And obviously, he threw a huge interception at the end of the game.
Yeah, and he needed that as well. I'd rather him get that out of the way right now because nobody's perfect. I mean, Tua's looking real good right now, but he's only played, 2 quarters of each game. So these Alabama fans need to calm down. Like, he's not going to make it to the NFL playing 2 quarters each game and really think he's going to be successful.
I don't think they're concerned with him. I don't think they're concerned with him getting to the NFL. It's more concerned with him being ready to play a national championship game, and he seems primed and poised to be able to do that.
Yeah, but like everybody said, they have not played anybody. I mean, first off, when he first started, what was it, national championship game, came in the second half, saved the game. So when you're losing, it's kind of easy to come in and just swing the ball out to win the game because you're losing anyway. So that's one thing. Another thing is you ain't been really playing nobody. So when you go up 30-0, you're not going to play the second half, but you don't have really anything up on your belt to show that you play a whole game.
So I can agree with that to a certain extent because, yeah, when you're not being pushed, then the game's completely different than if you're playing in tight games against really good teams, and they just haven't.
Exactly.
The best. What is the best defense that they've played? Louisville's awful. Ole Miss is awful. Arkansas is awful. Those are the Texas A&M. Texas A&M. Okay.
Ole Miss is awful.
Yeah, Texas A&M by far. Texas A&M by far is the best defense that they've played, and they're a top 25 to 30 defense. I guess I would put them in that range. But
Yeah.
But obviously, because Alabama's this good, is putting them in this position. If you took any other team in the country, I don't think that they would be beating Ole Miss by 55 points and beating Texas A&M by 25 points and beating even Arkansas for as bad as they are. Well, Arkansas, maybe there are a ton of teams that would beat them by 35 points because they lost to North Texas by 27 points. So, yeah,
Exactly.
I would have liked.
And I mean, I don't keep up with every single thing college-wise, but I do know, like, Alabama should be thanking Louisiana, the state of Louisiana, a lot for a lot of those recruits that they have on their team right now. Because I used to live in Birmingham, Alabama, and I know for a fact a lot of their talent comes from out of state. So when they up there on their high horse, everybody's roll tide, roll other states that's coming there and making Alabama look good, because Louisiana, Georgia, those are a lot of states that's making them look real good. I don't really see any talent coming out of Alabama.
Well, that's interesting that you say that. We could look at the roster and see who comes from where, but
the guy that won that national championship for them that got that in touchdown was from Louisiana. Certain.
Oh, you're talking about Devonta Smith
from Louisiana. Yeah. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from them, but they just need to come down to earth a little bit. They've been winning and all that. I mean, really, Nick Saban coaching for LSU kind of helped him recruit in that area. So he's always had ties in Texas and around Louisiana in the area. So that's really what's helping him keep these national championships, because he has 4 or 5 star athletes every year, while everybody else got like 3, 4, and 5 star athletes.
Well, that's part of the game. That builds the base.
Exactly.
So, Antonio, the thing is that Alabama doesn't have a big enough population to just recruit from Alabama and do what they're doing right now. I guess the second thing is that they're not going to be brought down to earth psychologically. They're not going to be brought down to earth or think less of themselves or not have that swag until somebody does it to them. They're going to have to be brought down to earth.
I think this is the year it's going to happen. I really do think. I mean, somebody's going to knock them off. I'm not going to say LSU is, but I know LSU every year gives them hell.
Well, they might lose a game. We've seen them lose a game almost every year. They only have one undefeated national championship team.
They're going to wind their way back into the national championship conversation, like last year.
So when you say they're going to be brought down to earth, they need to be brought down to earth where they're not winning the championship.
Yeah, exactly. And that should have happened last year, but Georgia, you can thank Georgia for that one. But but yeah, I mean, I have high hopes for LSU. Like I said, I've watched different teams, and any team can be beaten, and that's what fans have to realize. I mean, you can't get frustrated when the team lose, because I was waiting for LSU to lose. They're not going to go undefeated. I know that. Everybody already thought they were going to be 7-6, 6, and what else?
Sure.
They said like 6-6, or whatever they were saying, but they changed that whole narrative around, so everybody now want to jump on the bandwagon. Then when they lose their first game, everybody now they're trash and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these fans are so bipolar, I don't even get it.
well, fans with every team are like that. That doesn't. There's no fan base that doesn't have their delusional portions. They're all like that.
Exactly.
I'm looking at the roster right now, Antonio, and I see that the 3 quarterbacks for Alabama, Jalen Hurts, Tua, and Mac Jones, none of them came from Alabama. Their running backs didn't come from Alabama. Najee Harris and Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs.
You see what I'm saying now? You catch my drift. I'm not hating on Alabama. I'm just saying, like the state of Alabama needs to know. You can thank all these other states for making Alabama what they are right now. So all this roll all these other states mixed with Alabama, because a lot of players at LSU coming from Louisiana. So, I mean, and they're going to the NFL, and they're still playing in the NFL right now. So that's what LSU makes, NFL players. Prolonged careers, not just college football. So,
well, some college football fans would argue that they don't care about what the players do in the NFL. And some would argue that, hey, we take pride in moving our players to the NFL and then becoming great players at the next level. So you can kind of play that game on either side.
Yeah, exactly. But I really, truly think LSU is going to turn some heads again next week against Georgia, because I don't have faith in Georgia. From is suspect. I think Fields need to be starting for them, to be honest. But I mean, I'm not the coach. And then that game yesterday with LSU, Nick Brissett at the closing end of the game, he runs for 50, 60 yards, got them back in the game.
Yep.
I don't even think he touched the ball again after that. So there's some coaching problems there. So I put that one on Coach O. I put a lot of stuff on him. I put some stuff on their offense coordinator, which is Steve Ensminger. But, I mean, it's all new, so you're going to have that. Then you have a quarterback, and that's what people don't realize. Joe Burrow has only been with LSU for, 3 months now? he hasn't even really had time to mess with everybody. So it's going to be hard to just come in and be spectacular like all these other quarterbacks. They've been there for, longer period of time.
I thought we had a conversation with Matt Moscona from ESPN Radio Baton Rouge this week, and I thought he did a nice job of outlining the point that you're making right there about Joe Burrow and us not necessarily understanding, to the most part, what he's having to deal with right now and trying to get acclimated to all the things that he's trying to get acclimated to, and probably him being a gym rat and a guy that studies film constantly, and he's a coach's son, and all those things have helped him. But still, he hasn't been on campus that long. He hasn't developed. He hasn't had those summer drills and going back to the spring to develop the rapport with the wide receivers or any of that.
Exactly. I mean, I like him because he has what's that? Not the swag, but the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
That we never really had in like the last 10 years at quarterback. But it's like everybody we've had has been sporadic, and you just never know what you're going to get with him. At least you know he's trying to win the game. He's tough. He's this, he's that. But he's one thing you can't say, he's not going to try to win the game for you. So, I mean, I'll take that loss yesterday. And like I said, that probably might be the wake-up call for them, because that offensive line our offensive line has been a mess. Like, I don't even see how we won 5 games with that offensive line, but that just goes to show you what coaching can do, coaching the players and all that good jazz. But they're going to be a team to be reckoned with by the end of the day, and people will know them.
Okay, Antonio. I appreciate the phone call. Don't be a stranger.
All righty. Thank you, man.
All right. Have a great night.
All right. You too. I love you, Joe.
Thank you so much. Antonio, big LSU fan, not discouraged by the loss against Florida. Thinks it might be a wake-up call for the Tigers. I don't necessarily know from a talent standpoint and from a team value standpoint that was the game to lose. But as we look across college football, the teams don't always lose to the games and the teams that we anticipate before the season starts. We make all these prognostications before the seasons about what teams are going to lose to what teams, and it's not typically turns out to be the best teams. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's Gables Kane, Frank.
Hey, Frank. How are you?
Doing well. Mark, yourself?
I'm doing great. Good to hear from you.
Good, man. Good, man. Well, first, congratulations on that Texas-Oklahoma call yesterday, man.
Well, thank you.
I kind of had a feeling, that was a good game, man.
I get a few right.
Yeah. Just wanted to touch on something. Yes, something you said yesterday, and that you didn't really consider Miami and Florida State a rivalry up there with the Michigans and Ohio States and Notre Dames. And just curious as what your criteria is for a good rivalry. Because I think Miami and Florida State, they can, check off a few boxes as far as the criteria goes, as far as fan bases. It's just that they haven't been playing each other as long as these other teams.
Absolutely, Frank. So, first of all, I appreciate you asking this in a very, very calm manner, unlike what many college football fans would do. And so you're just asking the question and so forth. First of all, I'll make the statement that we all have our own opinions, and mine is not the word. It is an opinion. So I did mention, I know when I made that comment that I certainly considered it well within the top 10 rivalries in college football. I did make that statement as well. So it wasn't, I didn't say they don't have a rivalry. I would be a fool to say that that's not a rivalry. It's a huge rivalry from a talent standpoint and from a production standpoint on the field. There was a time from the late 80s until the early 2000s that it was the best rivalry. If that was the pure measurement, was just who has the most NFL players on the field and the most talent on the field year in, year out, that would have been the game.
Right.
There's no question about that. I'm just saying that if you took the totality of the tradition and the impact on college football and the number of eyeballs on the screens and in the seats, if you take all that into totality, I don't know if it would have been, if I would place it. I'd have to go through all the criteria that I believe that I would bring to the table that would need to be categorized and calculated and kind of considered, that I would do some kind of series on this at some point, maybe in the off season. And I would come up with some kind of ranking system that, again, would not be a perfect formula, but it would just be my perspective. But I just automatically think Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Auburn are the two preeminent rivalries in college football. Then the other ones I would rank in some order. And Florida State, Miami might be number 3 in my listing. It would be close.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure if you ask 10 different people to rank the top 5 rivalries, you probably get 10 different answers, I'm sure.
You would, although these polls are done, as you well know, all the time about the best rivalry in college football. And the two rivalries that I mentioned, the Iron Bowl and the Ohio State-Michigan rivalries, are typically, if you look up any fan poll out there, they typically finish 1-2 or 2-1 in that order.
Yeah, they don't. That's one thing that Miami and Florida State do not have. They don't have. They don't have like a title, I guess you could call it, to their rivalry, like like the Iron Bowl and they're also not. They're not two teams that were glamorized way back in the heyday of college football when Notre Dame and Michigans were winning everything in sight.
Sure.
I think that's probably two of the boxes that they couldn't check off as far as what goes into making a good rivalry. But the passion is just, I mean, if you want to know if you watched the game or not yesterday, but it's just, there's many years where they have bench clearing brawls, or they don't really brawl, but you know what I mean. They go at it with each other, and not that makes a good rivalry, but it's just the passion, between these two schools, certainly, I think goes into making a decent rivalry.
Well, see, we've got somebody on the live chat right now that's mentioning that Miami, FSU, that game has been the best rivalry since the late 70s. It's not even close. The combination of both Miami and Florida State's national championships has been the most since 1979. So if that's the sole criteria for this individual of who's won the most national championships, then over the last 5 years, I would say the Clemson-Florida State rivalry, I would say for about 4 or 5 years, was the best rivalry in college football. I don't even think that's close, but they combined to win the most for a 4 or 5 year span. That didn't make it the best rivalry just because they played each other. And I'm not comparing Clemson and Florida State to Florida State and Miami in any such way. But I don't think that can be the sole criteria for best rivalry.
Of course not. No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think so. There's probably if we really sat down and thought about it, I bet you there'd probably be about at least a dozen things that would go into making a good rivalry, I think.
And I also think that people live in the here and now. Most people live in the here and now. Therefore, as you well know, from 87, 88, in that range, Florida State, Miami was red hot up until 93, 94. And then Miami fell off after they lost that Orange Bowl to Nebraska and lost the national title. And then Florida and Florida State, they play every year. And Florida emerged under Spurrier. So did that suddenly become the best rivalry in college football based on just talent on the field and rankings? Because you could argue then Florida State for about 5 or 6, 7, 8 years there in the mid to late 90s eclipsed Miami and Florida State from the standpoint of just looking at the team's records and their rankings every year, and that being the size of the matchup based on that criteria.
Right. We had back in the 80s, the 80s, throughout the 80s, and I think into the early 90s, we had what was called a mythical state championship here, where all three teams played each other each year.
That's right.
Florida finally pulled out of the series with Miami, and then you got to throw Notre Dame. This is back in the days, I think, when Miami was still a major independent, before hitting the Big East, and those were some great games.
Absolutely.
And Miami Notre Dame is definitely a big rivalry, but unfortunately those games are few and far between. But when they do go up against each other, it's quite a game.
That's a unique rivalry in that I can't think of any other rivalry that was basically built on two matchups. Generally two matchups. It was built on that 87 game. It was built on, let me get my years straight. It was Jerry Faust last year at Notre Dame in 86 that Miami just wiped Notre Dame off the map, like 56-0. Right. And might have been 50-67. And Notre Dame, obviously, their backers, and Ara Park-Segan was doing the game. If people don't know, a longtime Notre Dame head coach, a great coach who won multiple national titles, was doing the game with Brent Musburger, and he was just appalled at Miami, quote unquote, running up the score. Well, if it was really broken down, I don't know that Miami really ran up the score. They were just that good, and Notre Dame was that bad at that point. Then Luke Holtz takes over. It takes him a year to get settled. They put up a better fight the next year, but then it propelled us into 1988, which of course brought on the 1-point game in South Bend. And I'm telling you all things that you already know, but I'm just talking to the audience. And then, of course, the rematch the next year in which Miami won at the Orange Bowl en route to their next national championship. But Notre Dame winning in South Bend. And of course, there's a 30-30 ESPN special made out of the kind of solely that game, but everything that branched off of that game and then became a rivalry, regardless of how much they played or didn't play over the next close to 30 years. That was such a huge matchup. And then Miami getting the revenge at the Orange Bowl against an undefeated Notre Dame team in a big win that Miami reclaimed the crown in 1989. That just that 2-game series was so huge that it has carried on to this day. And of course, they've played since then, but no matchups have even come close to those two.
Right. I think that 58-0, where they were accused of running up the score, I think that really helped ignite that rivalry, that particular game, because up until then, I mean, it was a game that was played every year, or not every year, and it wasn't it wasn't as passionate as the games were after. And I swear I can still hear Musburger and Parsegan just thrashing Miami towards the end of the game. But Jimmy Johnson said in an interview in the 30 for 30 that, he said, what do you want me to do? I'm putting my second and third string guys in, and they're still running over them.
Yeah, number one, and I think they did a nice job of depicting it because they showed the plays. Miami was basically running the ball off tackle. They weren't doing anything egregious to try to run up the score. But you put a third teamer in the game, and we see it every week in college football. These kids want to play. They haven't been able to play. They practice their guts out every day. They get to play on national TV against Notre Dame. They're going to play hard. And
plus they got fresh legs under them when they go in there.
Sure.
They haven't been playing the whole game.
Good point.
So yeah.
And another thing, and you could probably bring more clarification to this than me, just going back before that particular game. Yeah, I don't think there was anything necessarily special about Miami Notre Dame, but there were so many more independents at that time. I don't know that college football fans today realize that Penn State was independent, Maryland, Boston College, Louisville, South Carolina, all those teams were independents, and you would typically see them on each other's schedules.
Right.
Army, Navy.
Exactly. That's a great point, actually, to make. It sure is.
Syracuse.
But then the money from these, the money that the conferences were throwing at them was just, too hard to pass by, I guess.
I think I've got somebody in the live chat asking about Maryland being an independent. Yes, they were an independent at one point as well. They hit a kind of a rivalry. Yes, yes, Frank, go ahead.
Hello, I'm here.
Yeah, Frank.
Okay. Okay.
So I appreciate the phone call. Anything else?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Just want to touch on the rivalry subject, but anyhow, yeah. I don't know if you had a chance to see the new AP poll come out yet.
I did not. I try not to be affected by the AP poll when I release my own.
Okay, so I won't tell you.
Well, I released my video a couple hours ago, so we're good.
Okay.
What were your thoughts on the top 25?
Miami moved up one spot from 17 to 16. Florida made a huge jump, and rightfully so, from 22 to 14. 22 to 14. LSU was 13. Colorado, which you touched on earlier, is 19. I think this is their debut in the top 25. Am I right about that?
I believe so. I've had them ranked for a few weeks, but yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I watched them the first. I think they had an early game, before the Miami LSU game. I think Colorado had a game the Thursday or something before the first weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And I watched them. They were pretty good, actually. I mean, for considering it was the first week of the season. But they're coming into the rankings a little late to do anything, I don't think. But
well, think about it, Frank. What if they won the Pac-12 championship and went undefeated? Why should they be left out of the deal, regardless of and once the college football playoff selection committee gets a hold of this, we can forget these AP and coaches poll rankings. They mean nothing.
Exactly. That's just like the same thing when the BCS polls finally came out.
Yep.
What is it, like 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's in just a couple weeks. It's mid-October.
Right. So, yeah, I think you're right. If they can pull that off, I don't see any reason how they could keep them out. But like you say, stranger things have happened.
So they've got they just beat Arizona State. They've got USC and Washington the next 2 weeks. If they win those two games against USC and Washington on the road, then they're going to get some play. They're both on the road.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's definitely two, especially the Washington game would be a marquee win. That's another problem Miami has this season. They were, after the LSU game, the only other team Miami had was the next to last game of the season is Virginia Tech. And, we were kind of hoping they would be ranked up there when we played them. But Miami they have no chance at a marquee win in the regular season.
Nope.
To bolster them up. And I mean, you can see they beat North Carolina by 37 points, and they fell in the rankings. They beat Florida State yesterday. They only moved up one notch, so they're going to be hanging. They're going to be hanging around, the middle of the pack there, unless they can do something with the ACC championship.
Yeah, that's going to be the game. Of course, I'm not going to bypass these other games because, they've got a load of games that they're not going to be given credit for. But a few teams that could trip them up on a really bad night at Boston College, Duke, and of course the game in Blacksburg. Yeah.
Well, earlier in the season, Boston College seemed like the perfect trap game.
Yep.
I'm not so sure now.
Yeah.
But the one game that always worries me is Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
When Miami plays Georgia Tech, it's last year. It was actually last year. That was one of Miami's one of the games that they almost lost. last year.
Absolutely.
Came down to a late field goal, right? Late
Yeah.
field goal. And that triple option is something else.
Yeah, they
Just-
had to
just-
complete a fourth down play down the sideline to keep that drive alive.
Right. Right. Exactly. So,
All right, Frank. I
right,
see
Mark.
your handle on a
I
regular
appreciate
basis
your
on
time.
the chat, so I appreciate you calling.
Okay, Mark. I appreciate it. Take my call. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Have a good night.
Take care. You too, Mark. Bye-bye.
All right, Cable Canes, Frank calling us, and it's really nice when after seeing you guys make comments in the chat over and over and over, and faithfully joining the chat and the live stream, and then also making comments to my videos, that after a long time, months, years in some cases, that I get to talk to you guys on the phone. So to hear a voice and put a voice with the name and then get your perspective straight out more than just a quick line is a good thing. So I unfortunately have to shut it down. Work calls from the worldwide leader in just about 45 minutes. So I'm going to have to get off here. And beard or no beard, the last count I had on Facebook was 3616 beard. All right, folks. So Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Check out our top 25 that actually makes sense. I plan to release a bottom 10. I gave a look at Notre Dame football with 6 wins down and 6 games to go. Check that out. And I give a percentage chance of them winning out the rest of each game. And what else do we have? I got to look at these bowl projections, but man, that's going to take some time to dig into that. But I would like to do bowl projections. And of course, we'll have previews and predictions throughout the week. And I think it's about time to do a Heisman watch as well and get to some viewer comments. And of course, we will have the live stream fired up on Wednesday night. I believe we've got to go about an hour later than usual at 8 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday. I'll send out the notification Thursday night at 7 Eastern time as well, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Join the newsletter. Just send your email to mine. Send your email to MarkRogersTV at Gmail, and I'll get you right on the mailing list for tomorrow's newsletter, our 6th edition. My take and perspective on college football for the weekend. News, stats, trends, facts that you won't find anywhere else, and we'll keep you right on the insider track concerning our channel and what we have planned for the future. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thanks so much for joining.